Do you guys just want to watch? Of CU. That's very good for CU too. It has good colors. Yeah. That's what I remember. Photography or something like that.
But you were,
Well, and recognized that it was a staff driven.
I remember the first iteration though. It had there was a lot of,
consortium asked me.
but there's a lot of TIF stuff too though. Initially,
But doing a legislative agenda was something unusual.
Not the three items. Processing and staff. The unanimity makes it all go away. It's not unanimous.
And if they don't, they don't support any others that are ones that we actually. And we like, we did those there.
what do we think? What do we think? Eric is here too. Jeff, we think Jeff is here too. Five minutes waiting for one candidate and two board members. said that she'd start out with the questions. So do we need to let Matt know that the work session will be starting? Okay, with that. I don't know if we need, is this a regular meeting? It's our work session.
Work session.
Yeah, so I don't think we need to call to order a regular meeting, but just as a, in case anybody happens to be watching, that we're doing the candidate forum for the space that's been vacated by Eric, who had a change in jobs and will be moving out of town. So, and he didn't feel like he could commit enough time to being at the board, and I respect him for that. And once again, that we'll run this like a candidate forum, where we'll change positions and start at different locations and run, so everybody gets a chance to answer the one question at least once as the first person. So with that, Lisa, if you want to begin. And we'll start with George, and we'll go on to Jeff this time.
Okay, so can you hear me okay on here? Okay. I'm wondering if you could describe what your background or experience for the position is and why you want to be named.
Well, George Douglas. I've sat on this side of the table for a good many years. And I thought that it would be nice to sit on the other side and be on the decision side. My background is that I was born in the industrial mine camp. I've lived this really great part of my life. I worked for the university, retired there. You all know who I am, what I've done, so I thought I'd give it a shot.
Great, thanks. Lettuce.
I have local county federal government experience. I was town clerk for 2.5 years in this borough years ago. And I've made it very evident over the years that I know that we need to be active in all the other and participating in the community.
Okay, great.
And I have never participated in the local political process. In my career, I've been in lots of leadership positions that required me to work with people and hear the global view and then try to disseminate the information and make decisions that are good for the group. And that's it.
I've been in the town for 4 years, and I've definitely fallen in love with it during those 4 years. And in the last year, I've just really realized that the best way to keep it that way is to get involved and do my best to support the town. So I joined the HOA a year ago to get a taste of the town dynamics, and now I'd like to take it to the next level and work with the entire town instead of just Brown Creek.
Okay, thanks. Jeff.
And I've been in the town for 11 years, doing some work on the planning commission for a couple of years, and then I was on the board for 8 years. I think with the vacancy, I know that there's a short time between now and the next election, and not only is it going to be fun sometimes, but also having that experience will hopefully help you guys kind of continue moving forward over the next couple of months before the election, which gives everyone an opportunity to go ahead and come forward on the board again.
Great, thanks. So let's start with Jeff and work the other way.
You want another question from me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. What do you think is your strongest area, and what do you think is your weakest area related to board stuff?
Okay. Having sat on the board a lot, I think a couple of strong areas would be working obviously with the finance committee, understanding how the town finances work, the elements associated with that. I think also looking at, I'll say the larger picture for the town and what the impacts are going to be, the benefits, and weighing those off against sort of some of the individual interests. I think third is sort of listening and I guess it ties into that, is hearing what different residents have to say, what other interests have to say, and kind of bring all those together, kind of with a equitable solution, if you will. And things are not always the perfect solution per se, but there's a good balance that has to happen for the benefit of the town. I think the weaker areas are probably putting as much time as necessary for, some of the committees sometime. But certainly, for the needs for some of the local committees, I think getting into some of the committees during the middle of the week is a little more difficult.
Okay, thanks.
Well, I think my strong point comes from my years just working in the corporate world of having to manage customer support, deal with marketing, communications, all that. I think I do a good job of interacting with people and getting a message across so they know what's being done. I think probably the weak point would just be not being familiar enough with the inner workings of the board, so I can get up to speed quickly on that.
Okay.
I think my strength is perseverance, and that kind of goes along with my weakness, because I know I have a steep learning curve with coming up to speed with ordinances and laws and that sort of the detail of the work that you guys legislate. But going along with that weakness is a strong sense of wanting to understand, wanting to dive into the details, wanting to make sense of the detail that runs our town. And I pretty much don't stop until I understand it.
Great, thanks. Gladys?
My strength is persistence and communication. My weakness is being unhappy with you that you guys don't educate yourself to the issues enough.
Okay, George?
I really don't know what to say, to tell you the truth. Sitting all in these meetings, I understand, and I'm on the goal with you. I understand what the town's doing. I've talked to several people in this original town who contact me all the time pertaining because they know I do come to the meetings. That's my strong point. I do attend the meetings. Weak point, I shouldn't.
Okay. So next question, let's start with Gladys, work down towards Jeff, and end up with George. Okay.
Okay.
Biggest issue. Yeah. The next question is, what do you think is the biggest issue facing the town right now?
Retaining the businesses in the marketplace. And the next one would be to try and get something going with this project across the road for commercial base. We have to have that commercial base.
Okay.
And I agree with Gladys. The revenue base is everything, and then part two of that would be, if we have the revenue, how do we portion funds for things that we want to build in town?
And not to be repetitious, but I would agree also.
This is a recording.
Yeah, right.
Filling all those empty spaces in the Superior Marketplace and keeping them full so that we can have as diverse a tax base as possible.
I'll put a little bit of spin on it, right? I think I've been pretty vocal about, bringing a bigger set of big business and commercial, not necessarily the retail, but I think those are the business and the office are some of the things that are going to help support a lot of the commercial. I mean, the fact that I just noticed in the Safeway that yet another restaurant is opening or has closed and is opening again over in the Safeway Plaza. There it says that we need to bring more people in to be using our businesses, and it doesn't necessarily have to be rooftops. I think tied to that is making sure that the town itself has a goal for what they want to do with the remaining parcels, specifically the marketplace, or specifically the town centerpiece. And it's not a board whim from one year to the next, because if it changes from board to board, then no developer's ever going to come in. I think we as a town have to have a vision there. I think that's one of the challenges we face right now.
Okay.
Mine would be to try and help solve the 22 or 23 businesses over here in the Superior Marketplace and to get the Biala and Menkick properties online for revenue income.
Okay. other big questions? Okay. So let's see, this time we'll start with Pam and go towards George and end up with Ian.
Okay. The next one is, what is your philosophy regarding development in the town of Superior?
What is your philosophy regarding development in the town of Superior?
I feel pretty strongly that my role being a trustee would be to reflect the will of the group, which would be the entire town of Superior. That being said, to go back to what Gladys said, in terms of knowing the issues, knowing the ins and outs, that's very important. So as people share their opinions about what they would like to see, you can sort of educate along the way and build a base of knowledgeable opinions. And I see that as, I don't know if that answers the question, but I feel real strongly about a trustee being the representative for the group that they're representing.
Okay. Gladys?
Well, I have to stick to my commercial development, that I don't think we can do enough to get that going more. As far as residential, I try very hard to look at that. You know that I'm very biased about the project that is on the board now, but really, I don't think we need more homes. Not because of the issues, but we don't need more homes, we need the commercial development.
I have to agree with what Gladys says. You know, I'm really not for a lot of annexation for the regional town. Living here all your life, it's been a big change for me over 7 years. So I'm more for, I sit on a board for 14 years, and we were in the process and did get the marketplace off the ground for revenue for the town is my main purpose. As far as annexation, I'm not half on annexing to my rooftops.
Okay. Jeff?
I mean, I think we have, I'll say, a good base of development going on, and I think the opportunity is ours as the town to chart the direction for further development. So I think we should be telling developers what we want to build, what we want in this town. I think certainly the commercial piece, I agree, is there, but I think we have to be careful not to fall into the trap of we want to get it such that we'll do it at any cost. I think we have a good tax base right now. If we watch our spending and everything else like that, we can live off of what we have, but it's our place to determine what goes on in the future. I think we have to approach it with that philosophy going into any new development.
Okay. Ian?
I'm for just a balanced approach. Look at each parcel and decide if it makes sense to put, is it commercial or residential, or turn it into open space. I mean, I know there's parts of the town that would like to see everything that's left turned into open space. There's probably some people that would like to develop everything that's available. I'm somewhere down the middle where just take each one case by case.
Okay. I have that as a specific one, so Dana, do you have questions? And I'll start with Ian, go to Jeff, and then wrap around and finish with Pam.
Sure. So how do you feel that you can, that you identify and can represent all the diverse areas of our community?
Sorry, can you read the beginning again?
Just how do you feel that you identify and with the diverse areas of the community, and how do you feel that you can represent all the different areas of the community? Or how would you?
Well, I've, at least on the Rock Creek side of the hill, I know people from all different parts of the development, so I feel like I have a good idea of what they're experiencing. I would definitely need to reach out more to the original town and Sagamore side to understand better the issues that they face, which they probably have a set of issues that are drastically different in some cases than Rock Creek does. So that is kind of my blind spot right now, is really understanding those issues. But I have no problem with reaching out to somebody, Gladys or George or people in Sagamore to really understand what their opinions are.
So I think obviously communicating, talking to people is important from all parts of the town. I think where I live right now, we're all built out, so I have no backyard issues, first of all, which is advantageous because there's nothing to really sway one way or another based on where I live, per se. But I also think with a number of years on the board, I've heard a lot of the opinions from different members of the town, from different areas of the town, understand a lot of those issues, and in the past I've worked with different people in different parts of the town to address a lot of those issues.
Great, thanks. George?
You want to repeat the
Sure,
question?
Danielle.
Louder.
Sure. How do you feel that, how do you feel you identify with different areas of town, and how do you feel that you would do representing all those different areas?
The only way you can represent the different areas is to get out and talk to the people that express the opinions they want to talk to you. Be open, period. And I know it's hard for me to explain, but I'm from the north end of town now, and I do understand all the problems that we have down here because I'm here every day. I could get accustomed to going to Rock Creek if anybody wanted me to. It's a fairly new subdivision, so you don't really have the problems which you have in the old part of town.
Okay, Gladys?
I served on Pro Stack, and that was a real eye opener for me for Rock Creek, and that helped tremendously make me feel that I could communicate with those people up there. Of course, original town Sagamore, there's no problem. Being in the insurance industry, I'm used to dealing with business people, so I don't see that I really have a lot of problem. I'm sure that there's still lots for me to learn in Rock Creek, but once again, communicate.
And for me, I think about soliciting opinions and from all areas, and then doing the research to, again, getting back to an educated opinion. It's just vital.
Okay, thanks. Deborah, if you have something, and we'll start with George this time. We'll go back to the beginning. George going down to Jeff.
Okay. Which of these two different qualities, independent thinker or effective team player, do you feel is the most important quality to possess regarding a trustee, and why?
Did you get that?
Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, and louder.
Okay.
You guys have got to talk louder.
All right. Which of these two different qualities, independent thinker or effective team player, do you feel is the most important quality to possess regarding a trustee, and why? Which is more important to you as being a trustee, independent thinker or team player?
I believe in a team player, and then your trustee agreeing with your trustees and understanding what they're doing and what the odds are of what they want done. That's all I can say. That's it.
Okay, Gladys?
I don't know that one is better than the other one. It's a 50-50 situation. It comes back to, I just can't say enough, education and communicate about the issues and with the residents. To me, Lisa's coffees that she had, excuse my voice, I've been sick and so it comes and goes. Me too. Lisa's coffees that she holds is making the effort to communicate with the people. If they don't come and talk to her, she can't force them to do that. But at least she's offering that opportunity for them to come. And so it's a 50-50 situation.
And I think depending on the situation, either one of those attributes could be the ruling party. But when you think about independent thinking, especially serving on a town council, you would want independent thinking to mesh with the will of the group. And that's a soft skill that people may or may not have, but I think it's an important one.
Both are important, so it's a tough choice. But I would have to lean towards the independent thinker. Due to the magnitude of the decisions that can be made, I want somebody to stick to their guns if they really felt a certain way about an issue.
I don't think they're mutually exclusive, first of all, and I don't think team player means complete compromise. So I think you need to have independent thinking to bring fresh ideas to the board or fresh ideas to the discussion. But in the end, you have to be an effective team player. Otherwise, the best views in the world, if they can't be communicated and or portrayed with the goods and bads and everything else, if you can't communicate that to the rest of the board as part of a team, then the thoughts are effectively lost. So.
Okay, thanks. Lisa, and then we'll start with Jeff and work backwards that way. That's.
Okay.
I'm happy to listen.
Where's your current thinking on the town and the library issue, and why? And if you don't have an opinion, how would you get one?
The library issue, I actually have strong opinions on, and I think that reading is an important thing. I think that libraries bring a sense of community. I think that the town of Superior should have a library associated with it, and or really in town to potentially provide some of the community meeting places and other things that libraries can provide. I think the funding mechanism comes into one of us going to the town, understanding what the values are, and getting some sales tax increments or some sort of tax increase or increment to help support that, or find ways to replace some of the existing taxes to use for funding the library. But I think the library is fundamentally important to the town, and we should figure out a way, whether it's in conjunction with the town center or some other mechanism, get something in town.
I'm definitely for some sort of library services. I know it was painful for my household when we lost our card for a few months there and had to travel down to Broomfield. I'm still don't have a firm feeling on if I think a brick and mortar library in town is a good idea or not. But I definitely believe we need to continue to pay for, if nothing else, the Louisville service.
And I don't have a strong opinion either way. I go back to wanting to hear the voice of the town and what do people, how much would people use the library? Do they feel it's necessary? Having those conversations. For myself, when I think of a library, besides the reading piece, I think of the community piece. And that's a piece that does draw me towards a brick and mortar building. Just that community piece where people can come and have conversations, and we could offer forums, all kinds of community things. But again, getting back to speaking for the voice of the town, I think that's really imperative. And I also would like to see some data on how much the Louisville Library actually was used by Superior residents. Some hard facts and figures. And I'm very interested in that. But that's kind of probably where I would start, actually. Start getting that information.
Okay. Gladys?
I will make my answer very short because I can go on about this for a long time, and I'm sure people will think it's biased. This town absolutely needs a library, and I agree with Jeff. We have to come up with some way to finance it.
Okay. George?
I'm definitely for a library in the town of Superior, providing we have the revenues to support it. That's the problem. We don't have one now. We didn't have the revenues to have a library. We didn't have the income in the town at all. So I am in support of the library if the town has the revenues to support the library.
Okay. Dana? Deborah? So, Deborah, we'll start with Gladys, work down towards Jeff, and end up with George.
Okay. What issue that the town of Superior either faces or could face is the most difficult for you to have a stance on, and why?
Say it again, please. I'm trying to think.
So what issue that we either face or could face is the most difficult for you to have a stance on, and why?
I'm not usually at a loss for words. Well, the most difficult issue would be if more stores moved out of the shopping center. I would be distraught over that, probably. And, you know, I don't know how I would handle it, because with the economy the way it is, there's not much you can do about it. These companies close their doors and have financial problems. The shopping center, we need every store up there that we can keep, as well as, and I say the shopping center, but I'm also talking about Safeway complex down on Colton Road. I guess I'm sort of excuse me, anxious for this development to get it going up on Colton Road, to see what they bring in for businesses and see what that's going to bring in for us for finances. Because I think every area that we can get for revenue is great. I just wish something could get going on Biela Minkick commercially, but I'll have to stick with the commercial growth.
Okay.
And for me, a difficult stance would be spending, because it is difficult when you look at the state of our country and our world to, I don't want to say spend frivolously, but to be very calculated and respectful of the funds that we do have. And so it would be difficult for me, as soon as spending comes up, my red flag goes up and I'm listening, and so I guess that would qualify as a difficult stance.
I guess the only thing I can think of that I have a tricky time with a stance on, and mostly due to the organization I'm with now, is, trash across the city. And that's only because of being on the HOA and the difficulties between the HOA and the town on resolving that issue.
I think there's I'll say two ways of looking at difficult, right? One is, I think it's personally difficult to make decisions on some of the development. I think that, especially as we look at the Biela Minkick and a couple of the remaining properties, is they're all adjacent to some level to residents, and they all have impact on different parts of town for different people, and it does impact their lives much as the marketplace did for original town. So I think it's very, very, very difficult from a personal perspective, because we are a relatively small town, we know people, and we know we're impacting people's lives. So, but on the other side of that is, I know what I think we need to have in the town. I believe in what the town needs in the long term. But I think personally that's difficult. I think on the difficult, can I say yes or no? Hard to, on the edge, on the fence, on decisions. I think when you start looking at recreational programs and spending money on there, that's always a difficult one. We've over the history of the town, or at least the history that I've been in the town, when we've tried to go for funding on these pieces and look at funding, new services like that, it's always a 49-51% split every time we've gone to the electorate. And so there's not a clear-cut way, one way or another, and I know that becomes a very, very difficult piece. Again, that's why we have elections, that's why we encourage people to participate, but still those become difficult decisions to make.
Okay. Thanks. George?
I see that the town's most difficult problem is getting overpass completed the way it's supposed to be. We put $5 million into that overpass in with the neighbors, and they were supposed to complete their side of the problem. And I'm going back and look this up, because I'm sure they agreed to fix the turn going west side, going west of Boulder, and there's nothing been done about that. And it is a dangerous bridge, really it is. We have several accidents there all the time, and I don't know how that's going to be the town to see that it gets completed right, so we can move traffic, we can have annexation, but we can't the way the traffic situation is now.
Okay.
Thank you.
Lisa? We'll start with Pamela and move towards George and end up with Ian.
My next question had to do with, how would you communicate with residents, and how do you have any suggestions for how you think the town should communicate better?
Is that me? I think about this all the time, and I have to say in my work life, it's the number one obstacle to getting things done. So I have total appreciation for the communication piece. I like the idea of Lisa's coffees, inviting people to come, have a conversation, and of course, viewing the meetings on TV and such. If I put myself in the position of a trustee, what would I do to elicit opinions from people?
And communicate. Yeah.
Say that.
And communicate as well, so.
Communicate to the people?
Both ways, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I didn't mean to interrupt you, sorry.
I'm wondering, I guess a newsletter, I don't know how much the newsletter that we currently have addresses issues that are upcoming that we invite people to come and think about, learn more, kind of going along the lines of what Scott did with the Citizens Academy. But giving people a chance to be educated about the issue and inviting the men to do that, setting up forums or whatever it takes. And then you see who's interested and who's going to have a voice and who passes.
Well, I think we need the hard copy newsletter. We need to keep that. This town board has gone way too far electronically. It does not get the communication with residents that I think that the hard copy does. Your copies, Lisa, but I think we also have to look back at one of our former town board members that we had. At the time he was doing it, he didn't get enough appreciation for what he was doing, and that was Brian Appleby. He was out. He was always talking to people. He always knew what was going on everywhere in town. And I have to come back to my communication. If you don't get out and drive up and down the streets, or stop and talk to the people in the parking lot, or stand at Superior Liquor and talk to them, or wherever you are in this town, then you're not being a good trustee and mayor.
The hard copy is the main thing for people because they don't go electronic all the time, and if they have the newsletter around, they can refer back to it all the time. That's why I do like to see it. My main thing is getting out and talking to people. I talk to people constantly, period. If they want to know something, call me. I'll find out if we can. We'll solve the problem. Or give them an answer, one way or the other. That's how I communicate with people.
For myself, I think there's a couple different ways. One is, I think first and foremost, to be approachable so that people are, we're going this way, right?
Yes, yep, you're right.
I'm getting confused. Yeah. Oh, first and foremost is to be approachable. I think if, as George said, you have to be around so that people are comfortable to come up and talk to you if you're in a parking lot somewhere. And I think to be able to talk to people that way is one piece. But I think also there is a class of people who don't really want to necessarily come up and talk to you per se, but they do want to hear what's going on. So, I know people have tried to start it, and, more electronic ways are really the way to get sort of latest and greatest information out, more so than not. So I think setting up some other electronic mechanism, whether it's a website, a blog, and all those fancy little things that people want to talk about all the time, but having a way to have regular communication outward is important. I think getting a mechanism for feedback is also important, and that's what I think there's some benefits. I mean, obviously we've seen some issues with our CAC list, but on the flip side, I think it also does give you a pulse of what's going on and what people are feeling and frustrations people are feeling in the town, and you can filter some of that if you have to personally, but there's some underlying messages there. So I think some of those are some key mechanisms. Obviously, the coffees and other things are important, though. Again, people have certain busy schedules, and trying to make a certain time, you don't always necessarily get the broadest number of people. As for the town, I think it's important for the town to continue making things like the newsletter there, the website there. Personally, I'm starting to feel a little bit the newsletter is becoming a little bit of a sales pitch as opposed to a more generic set of information per se. I'm not always sure that it's well, it portrays things in a certain light, I guess. And so I think maintaining things like the CAC or other mechanisms for getting feedback and having open discussion is important. And discussion today is geared around people being able to give their input. And again, you still have to filter out some of those things, and we all have to deal with personalities that maybe push a little too far in public forums, but it's still overall a benefit.
Well, definitely face-to-face interactions like the coffees or being out at the town events so that people can just come up to you and tell you what they think. I think a lot of the structured pieces are there. They might need a little tweaking. The website, the newsletter. I think one thing that can help a lot in both is kind of starting to educate the populace on something big that's coming up early on, give background on why it's being done, what the pros and cons are. I think a lot of people in town kind of feel like some things that are big just sneak up on them all of a sudden, which, it's not necessarily the case. It's been going on, but it's just not raised to a high enough level that the average person gets it in front of them. So I think that would probably be the key piece, is figuring out how to really get a start as far back as possible and educate everybody on upcoming town decisions.
Okay. I have a couple then. So let's see. We're starting at Ian, I think, going to Jeff, and ending up with Pamela. So I'll ask just a concrete question. Do you anticipate that you'd be running for election in April?
I do.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Are you going to run for election in April? Wait, it's not your turn yet.
It is now, though.
I'm undecided now if I'm going to run in April or not.
Undecided. Okay. And once again, I'm not, either way. So.
That's several months down the road. I don't have that on my agenda.
Okay.
And I'm the same. I haven't thought. I just thought an interim position would be a way to get my feet wet. So I'm kind of not beyond that yet.
Okay. Sounds fair. Let's see, where are we at? I think we're at George. So what are your hot button issues, one or two of the most important things that town needs to address? And I think everybody's touched upon it on, particular issues, but just once again, what do you think is the most important thing that town needs to work on right now?
Number one is seal coating on the streets. We haven't had no seal coating this year. All the streets should be seal coated with sand put on top of them to preserve them. That's number one. Number two is our lane striping of McCaslin Boulevard and over here at the corner. That's a big issue. Taking care of the one up on McCaslin, on 4th Street up there. That needs extended around the corner. And the light needs fixed, like the gentleman said a while back. It's got the traffic running into one lane there. You don't know what you're doing. Them are important items to me, as safety factors.
Okay. Thanks. Gladys?
My hot button is the street project in the south addition of the town of Superior. People cannot get access to their property because the alley doesn't allow that. Nothing has been done about the drainage in the alley, and people are still having their property flooded. That is not right at all. The project that was done down there made the streets narrower. The 8 feet on each side of the street has material in there that is absolutely horrendously dangerous. I have not mowed, excuse me, excuse me, I did not mow the weeds in that addition on that street in front of my property because of the fact my lawnmower is going to pick up the rocks that's there and they're going to throw them. Now, my mower hits somebody and kills them, I'm not going to be liable. That is the town's responsibility to make that decent. And I will stop because I can go on and on and on.
Okay. Emma?
I'll be very quick. I agree with George, the safety issue of the exit off 36 merging with McCaslin. That's
Okay.
it.
Ian?
A hot button for me has been voter participation. Just having looked at the numbers and seeing that only 500 people voted in the last election out of 8,500 voters, that I'd just really like to find a way to get the town more energized so that we get everybody involved, or at least the majority of the voters involved, rather than a very small group of people.
Okay. Jeff?
So my hot buttons are making sure we have long-term plans in place, and that goes for, educating on some of the commercial properties, making sure we, again, get a town vision for that. As we look at Parks and Rec, having a long-term plan for Parks and Rec, and then so that we're not kind of piecemealing things as we go along, and then a long-term plan for the maintenance pieces. I think we've always said that as the town builds out, we're going to be focused on maintaining the town. It doesn't have to be about additions per se, but it has to be doing a good job of maintaining it and setting up the right plan. So, making sure we're doing long-term planning is important.
Okay. And then starting with Jeff, I think I'm working backwards. The town board frequently has citizens come forward and say, we would like more turf, we'd like another park over here, we would like to have a library, more swimming pools, more amenities. Obviously, these amenities cost the town capital construction and operation and maintenance costs. How would you anticipate dealing with resident requested? And if you were interested in adding additional amenities, how would you anticipate funding them?
Gee, I think I answered that. No. In reality, I think we do have to sort of say, and as you know, right, I've pushed for a number of years, saying that we come up with what the long-term plan is, and we've gone to get feedback from the residents on that, and really put the plan in place and go to the voters to say this is a longer-term strategy for parks and recs and amenities, and account for that. Yeah, we're going to have some small changes as time goes on, but I think getting a basic plan in place that we can work to execute to and fund from both a capital and an operation standpoint is key to being able to deliver anything. I think because as we kind of grab pieces and someone has an idea that sounds cool. I love cool ideas, but it needs to be put in context with the bigger whole and how to be funded and everything else. So I would look at defining those amenities that are needed up front, or defining some amount, and put a funding plan in place and leave some percentage above that, or leave some, call it some slush, if you will, in there to help account for some smaller projects or different projects that may come up. But I think ultimately the town has never had a dedicated funding source for parks and recs, and we can do that if we're going to have that.
Okay.
Well, I guess for me, it would just take in the ideas and review them for feasibility, and bring them to the larger group if they seem like they're possible, or bring them all so everyone can review them too, and then try and prioritize and bring them to the town to vote on to pay for, given that at the end of the day it's probably going to be a tax increase that pays for any large capital construction.
And it would be nice to have a long-term vision, somewhat like a business plan, where you have the vision, then you have a timeline. These are the things we're going to do this year. These are the things we're going to do next year. Tie them to revenue streams. And so we all sort of know which direction we're moving. But then, like Jeff said, keeping a slush fund on the side, or where you can be a little bit more pivotal and respond to needs as they come up.
On your pro stack, the recreation has been very well established. Scott has established the 5-year budget, and it was interesting to work on that over that 5-year time period to program that stuff, program the different things out, and people have no problem about bringing things forward as to what they would like as far as rec projects. As far as funding it, I'm going to make a lot of people unhappy, but I'm going to say that staff salaries need to be reviewed and cut.
Okay. George?
The board's going to have consider how to get these 20 or 23 empty spots over here in the Superior Marketplace so we can have some sales tax revenue coming in off of those. Sales tax is going to have to be our provider for our future here in this town.
Okay. Then, let's see, where are we at? I think I'm losing track of where we're at. I think Gladys, I believe, yes. So, many different developments in town, changes in town, impact different people differently. There's backyard issues that we're all aware of. And if there's a backyard issue, how would you deal with that? Would you be able to see the larger vision, or would you be more representing the people that you might live next to, or the impacts that might be dealt upon you personally?
In original town, we have alleys. And that makes a lot of difference in the character of a community. And the development that is presently being talked about, I'm sorry that alleys haven't been made to be put in that development, because I think that it continues the character of present original town. And it is extremely hard for Rock Creek people to accept the fact that they would not be here if it wasn't for original town originally. And Sagamore has accepted that, and Sagamore has been dealt several blows because of Rock Creek. And I just cannot come up with a way to get the Rock Creek people to understand what life is like in a regional town, and that it's not all 21st century. I'm probably not answering your question, and I'm getting off on some of it. But as far as dealing with the issues, I will have to say that Scott has been a good town manager as far as trying to congeal the town. Bruce divided us horrifically. And so Scott has been trying to work, I feel, to congeal the town so that we aren't segregated again. But it's going to take more from the town board and staff and just everyone to not feel that we're segregated. I think when you have a segregated issue the way we do in this town, and I'm not talking by color of skin, I'm talking by neighborhoods, that you're going to have issues that aren't going to be resolved. Rock Creek people do not understand the alley issue, drainage issue, and access to their property, to the residents' property, the way that we in original town do. There are people in Sagamore seem to understand it. I don't understand why Rock Creek people don't understand it. But I guess it's just going to come back to more education of the town board, and that's all I can say. And I'm not sure I answered your question.
That's good.
Yeah, you're taking me on a different vein here.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry. Didn't forget everything I said.
No, I think it does bring to mind, as we're making decisions about backyard issues, to pull back from that and say, what's the big picture, and where are the major challenges, and how do we go and we clean some of these other things up before we start adding in new things. Kind of clean as you go.
Well, I'd say you have to figure out how to balance the two, because if you go completely big picture, then you're definitely going to become insensitive to a number of people within the town and what they're experiencing. And if you only react to backyard issues, you will pretty much never accomplish anything, because there's a backyard issue for everyone. So at the end of the day, it's trying to figure out when is the right time to lean one way or the other, and maybe find a balance in between.
I think almost every issue is a backyard issue to somebody. And I think, first and foremost, listening to people and giving them the respect that's necessary to listen to them and hear their opinions and understand what the situation, as well as understand the perspective that they're coming from is probably 75% of what people are really asking for when there is a backyard issue is to be heard. And then I think secondly, you need to look at the big picture and you need to communicate the decisions and how they and how they impact the big picture, so that the people who have a backyard issue can at least gain some appreciation on the other side. But I think first and foremost, you have to be willing to listen and truly consider, not just play lip service, but truly consider what they're saying. And in some cases, you won't be able to do everything that they want you to do in a backyard issue, but by truly listening and understanding, I think goes a long way.
Okay.
I kind of have to agree with Gladys about the alleys and so forth. You do have 3 separate different areas. You have Rock Creek, which you people bought when you knew what it was going to be like over there. It was planned well before you ever got here. You do have the original town. We're the people here. We help each other out. If we have a backyard issue, we go discuss it with the people and we get it solved. Scott's done a good job as far as communicating amongst these 3 areas. Sagamore's the other area. We have quite a few problems, drainage problems and so forth. So every area has their own means to take care of. The board has to understand that when they're sitting out there.
Okay. Thanks. I have a sort of a general home rule question. So home rule provides some opportunity to have increased flexibility, but then again has negative connotations to many people for various reasons. Some of the things that could be included in a home rule would be wards and or additional taxation on lodging taxes and things like that. Do you have and other changes with elections, perhaps? Do you have a feeling about home rule, and if not, then about any of these other issues?
Are you starting with?
Who's up?
Pamela, and then Gladys.
Could you repeat that?
So it's the big home rule question. My comment is that we won't be going to home rule. At least there won't be an election anytime soon, from my perspective. But home rule does provide some flexibility for the town, either in taxation questions, changing elections around, ward systems. Do you have a feeling about home rule one way or the other? Or if not, about any of those other particular issues?
As far as home rule, that was one of the areas that I really wanted to understand and get into, and I know we were getting a task force together to kind of look at that. So as far as having an opinion, I do not. I don't know enough about it to have an opinion, but that's also the interesting part, because you can go in, very objectively and take a look. So.
Okay. Gladys?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I thought you would go the other way. I'm against home rule. You don't have to have home rule to have wards. There are state statutes that will allow you to pass an ordinance and have wards. And that is something that this town definitely needs. We need equal representation from all parts of town on the board. Right now, everybody on the board is from Rock Creek, and that is extremely unfair. Extremely unfair. Talk about segregation, that's it. So any law that you want to pass, you can pass a law and move and do an ordinance, whichever term you want to use, and move your elections from April to November. You don't have to have home rule to do that. You do not need home rule to set up the laws and ordinances of this town that you want.
Okay. George?
You know how I feel about home rule. We've had it here twice already, and it's been defeated twice. I need to go no farther than that. The other object is you got 5 good candidates here, and you're going to have a tough job of going, making a decision on what you want to do. It is going to be a tough.
Okay. Thanks. Jeff?
I think my opinion on home rule as well, Andrew. But I have not been a real strong supporter of home rule. I think 2 reasons why. I think a lot of the pieces that we can obtain from home rule, we can do through statute. But I also think some of the situations that we're coming up, if we spend our time getting the hotels and things like that in place first, and I know there's agreements that we proposed before for the equivalent of hotel taxes and things like that. I think we can accomplish some of those. I think my other concern on the home rule piece is, the town is divided in a lot of ways, and I think the home rule process that I understand scares me a little bit in that I think it invites the potential to bring yet another chasm into dividing people within the town, and that's one of my big concerns, and I've voiced that before. Some of the other issues around wards and things like that, I don't have a strong opinion on right now. Haven't thought about wards too much, but understand some of the needs for that.
I don't have a strong opinion either way on implementing home rule, though I think it gets vilified more than it needs to. I mean, I think home rule's as good or bad as the people that implement it. Since you're writing your own charter, if it's going to be negative, it's because the people that created the charter made something onerous about it. So I don't have any problem with us doing it, and I think we could probably do it well, using examples of other towns that people think did it badly. But
Okay. Additional questions? Have additional questions? Ask away. Let's see. I think that we're starting with the end. Just
Where?
Ian and going this way.
Yeah, sorry. I thought you said the end. Sorry.
The end.
The end. I'm not hearing so well. I wondered if there was an idea from another town, either locally or farther away, that you thought was really interesting that maybe Superior should explore.
Is there an idea? Repeat it louder, please, Lisa.
I was speaking right into this. I'm trying.
I know, but he can't hear.
Yes. I wondered if there was an idea from another town, either locally or farther away, that you thought was interesting and that the town of Superior should explore.
sadly, I have to say I can't think of anything right now.
I mean, I think there are a number of development examples around town, Stapleton and some other areas there that we might want to look at. I think we've done a lot of that in part of our visioning for the town center. Certainly, those are interesting things to explore. Don't know that they're the end all per se, and we need to define that ourselves. So we can look that way if we want to.
George?
I have a comment on this.
Okay. Gladys?
Well, I have to agree with Jeff that I think that when time does come for development, that we need to look at lots of other towns before any final decisions are made. But I tell Suzanne all the time, there is not another government like Superior where residents can be as vocal and have their say about this and that and the other thing as we are in Superior. I feel very lucky that we have a very, I feel, open government when it comes to verbal contact with our board. Because there are other governments that you cannot talk to the mayor and councilmen, and that isn't the case here.
Yeah, I want to strongly underline what Gladys said. I feel, and that's one reason I'm here tonight. And even just Lisa posing that question, I haven't thought about it, but what a wonderful way to start thinking about what we can bring into the town. Just you asking the question says a lot. So thank you for that. I don't have an answer, but boy, I do like thinking about it.
Okay. And then I want to see if anybody has individual, we don't have to answer these all, if anybody has individual questions for individual candidates. Yeah. Well, I have one question, a couple of questions. So, Ian, you're on the Homeowners Association board. Do you feel that there's not a technical conflict, but do you see any conflict with being on the board?
No, I don't. I mean, I hope being on the town board would help with relations between the two organizations. You know, Elia is already on both, and hopefully I could continue to help get the two organizations, given how much of the town that they interact with, to maybe work towards some common goals. Feels unfortunately on the HOA side that sometimes you can't figure out, and I'm not saying who's the source of it, can't figure out how to get on the same page. So,
okay. I think that's all anybody else have any particular questions, either as a collective or individually?
I mean, this is just kind of curious to know, where does each person live specifically? You don't have to say the street, but And don't say Rock Creek, because I want to know even more specific than that.
She wants to know what part of town you live in, George.
I live in West End on First Street, is where I'll tell you where I live.
In original town.
That's, well, original town Superior, whatever, that's where I live.
I live on South Third in original town, down by the trailhead.
And I live on Reliance Circle, which is sort of by the water treatment plant.
I live on Green Lane in Rock Creek.
And I live over near Circle Park, near Superior Elementary, Rock Creek.
Let's see, I don't have any more questions. Any other questions from the board? Manager, do you have any questions you'd like to ask?
Thank you, but I'm not going to go there.
Okay, I didn't think that you would, but I wanted to offer the opportunity.
Yeah.
Do you have questions for us then? Jeff?
Just what's your, and I apologize for not being here at the very beginning, what's the process here? Are you going to discuss this tonight, discuss this next week?
So we're going to discuss it a little bit tonight. So the process is that I'd like to have appoint somebody at the next regularly scheduled meeting, which is next week. We're currently in the middle of a public hearing that we'll need to finish prior to doing that. So it probably be during, I don't have my look ahead in front of me, but a little bit later in the meeting. And that I'm going to have the rest of the board listen into tonight's session so that they can have weigh in on this. And then we'll have to discuss how to go from there. I probably am going to ask board members to individually and not as a group as a whole, just send me an email if you have a particular favorite candidate. And then if there's unanimity, I'm not expecting that, but if there is unanimity, then we'll probably appoint that person. If there's not, then I think the best way to deal with that is actually to do some form of voting at that meeting. And I'll have to come up with some, or we can all come up with some structure of how that would occur. We've done that in the past when we've had to fill other vacancies, and that's sometimes taken a few votes to get to the candidate. So that's generally how I see this happening.
So it might be and it might not be at the next meeting, then the decision will
I'd like
be made?
to have a decision at the next meeting. Once again, it either would be, if for some reason there was like, everybody said, oh, I want candidate X. Okay, well, we can just, notify everybody and go from there. But if we don't have one individual, and I'm not expecting that there will be, then we'll have some form of voting at the meeting with the town board. But once again, I'll need to think about that some more. But that's generally how we've done it in the past.
But you're not expecting any more statements next week or anything? You're not expecting us to make any more statements next week?
No.
Okay.
No?
Thank you.
So, can I just
Yeah, of
clarify?
course.
Do they need to be available next Monday? I mean, will they actually sit on the board for the end of the meeting then? Is that?
I'm not sure that would be necessary.
Okay.
I mean, if they wanted to, we could probably figure out a way to swear somebody in, but otherwise I probably would wait till the subsequent meeting.
And can I just ask, if we're emailing, how do we make that a public?
I was not, once again, email me individually, not as a group.
Okay.
If you want to, you can certainly state that at the meeting. If for some reason, I mean, it'll become clear cut at the meeting if there is unanimity, because that means that the email sent to me was that everybody had the same opinion. I was anticipating the voting to be secret. That's how we've done it in the past at the board meeting. But once again, there's no official way of doing this. So if people feel strongly one way or the other about doing something, let me know.
I do.
Other question?
Okay.
Personally, if I were over there, I'd want it all out in the open.
Okay.
That's my opinion as a trustee.
Okay.
I'd like to see it very public.
we can certainly do that at the meeting if you like. So,
I thought when we got named that the voting was public. Dana, but I can't remember. Do you remember? I thought I remember Chad's hands.
Actually, I think it was public.
okay.
You don't remember? Okay, you don't think so?
I don't think so. The ones that I remember, we passed papers,
Okay.
but I certainly might have missed.
passing slips of paper before
Right.
on some, I think when Joe sat in.
Yeah, I think it's.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry if I misremember.
So, but if people feel strongly about that, make sure you let me know.
I
So, I mean-
personally just feel that it would be good for everyone to know how we arrived at that in a public forum. Instead of hearing that it was arrived by secret emails. That's just my opinion. But, if no one else agrees.
So my thoughts about this, I mean, it's a good discussion, and once again, we need to have everybody weigh in on this. Sometimes the secret ballot is helpful because you can express, I mean, sometimes people, even at the board level, don't feel comfortable expressing their, deepest, darkest desires in terms of candidates, and that you can sometimes be more open about the person that you are interested in.
Secret ballots is an open government.
I'd like to
This is a different issue. So, but then again,
Secret ballots is not open government.
okay. And the other reason would be that it would sometimes, I mean, if you start talking about an individual, this would be sort of like doing a personnel review in the open, and I'm not really interested in doing personnel interviews in an open forum. It can generate a whole bunch of hard feelings depending on how it's perceived. So that's the other benefit. So, but let me know.
I'd like to leave it to you.
Okay? Well, if you have strong feelings, just let me know.
I think we should be
So
good.
I know where you are. So message delivered.
All righty.
And anything else that you'd like to go over tonight? Any other questions? Anything else that you feel like you haven't? Sometimes you get at the end of the forum, then you say, "Oh, I really meant to talk about this." And you don't have to say anything, but if you feel like you've missed something that you really wanted to get out, then just let us know.
I'm kind of surprised that you guys don't have a rubric you're working from in terms of selecting a trustee, which would kind of quantify your opinion.
A checklist
So
of
yeah.
a pro-con
on a
statement
scale
for
of 0
each
to
one.
5, this quality, rank it. This quality, rank it. This strengths or whatever. Then it becomes quantified data, so you don't have such an opinionated. And then you talk about communicating with the public. That's a big piece.
Okay. Anything else that anybody would like to get out?
Thank you.
Well, I wanted to, so I think we can wrap this up. I actually wanted to thank all of you once again for coming forward. This is always a difficult thing to do. It's time consuming. The whole process can be anxiety provoking. Putting yourself out there. I mean, I think that we've all done this. You put yourself out there to try to do something good in the community, and I appreciate everybody doing this. And once again, it's hard work to go through the process, and it's hard work as a trustee. So thank you once again. So,
Could I make one comment?
of course.
I find it interesting that you have done this forum and that you did not look at the fact of simply taking the next highest vote getter in the last election. I would like a comment on that.
So you feel like we should.
I'm interested in hearing comments, but that would have been a very easy way to get someone on the board and not have to do this forum.
So that would, I mean, anybody comments, so I don't want to speak for the board, but,
I'd be happy to comment.
okay.
I honestly thought that that was the protocol.
I did too.
But I'm happy to do it this way also, although it was something I had considered.
I've been, oh, go ahead.
Well, I actually asked a lot of people around town what they thought about that, and a lot of the comments I got were, that was 2 years ago was the last election, things have changed, and it's not really necessarily a valid or current result anymore. So a lot of people I spoke to thought that probably wasn't the best idea, although I did agree, it's one way to do it. It's not the way we've necessarily done it in the past either. So.
Yeah, when an opening happens shortly after an election, then I'm almost always the one arguing for the next highest vote getter, because that's sort of the latest feedback. When it's not right near an election, then I don't think that's necessarily the best way. I'm happy with the interview process.
And that,
It's sort of who's currently interested, who's currently got what experience.
and that would be my perspective about this as well. And, the other choice would be we could hold a special election, but, would that make any sense with a few months coming before the next election? That didn't, at least from my perspective, that didn't seem to make a whole bunch of sense either, to go through that expense and then have to redo it all over again in a couple of months. So, all right, well, I think we can wrap it up. Yes, George?
I'll say one thing, Mayor.
Mhm.
Previous years, the reason that they went to this type of vote, passing it back, we was lucky to get 2 people to run for a seat on the board. I'm serious. But I think you should consider, not because I'm a higher vote getter, that you ought to go that route, because it doesn't hurt anybody's feelings, like all 5 people sitting here. A person goes to the extent of putting out and want to run for the town and putting their name in front of the public, putting out their signs and going to the expense. There should be considered in the future that the highest vote getter is someone who resigns, because it's unexpected that they resign. That the next one in line, regardless of who it be, get that vote, get that seat. It saves a lot of hard feelings. I realize that you're saying passing back and forth. We've done that. Like I said, we're lucky to get 1 or 2 people to run for the board. And actually run for a seat.
I agree.
So we're a town of 11,000 now. I think that you can tell right by the people sitting there at this table tonight. Love this town and love the way it's going to end up. And that's why they have an interest in being here. To be work with this board, work with this town.
I agree.
That's all I can say.
Yeah. Gladys?
We're a statutory town. I think the state statutes need to be reviewed regarding that situation. It doesn't matter whether it's 2 weeks after an election or 2 years after an election. You need to look at the state statutes.
Okay.
So we did that.
Anything else?
We did that.
Okay. Well, I think we can wrap it up, and thank you very much. Appreciate it once again. Have a nice evening.